AI is here to help, not replace. Do you believe it when they say that?
When you look at layoffs happening in the technology industry, artificial intelligence is a very buzzy way to use AI as air cover.
I'm trying to build a career in media.
You can't just be writing articles. That's not what we do anymore.
Katie Drummond, you're the Global Editorial Director of WIRED, one of the most influential media outlets in the world. What skill set should I start building today? Katie,
Hello.
hi.
Here I am. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. It's nice to see you. I'm good.
Yeah. Are you ready for our talk today?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
We know that AI is changing everything faster than we thought, right?
Yeah.
But even when you ask someone like Sam Altman, for example, he says AI is here to help, not replace. Do you believe it when they say that?
Well, I think it's important to always, never to be cynical, but always to be skeptical. The fact of the matter, though, is that when you look at something like layoffs happening in the white collar sector in the technology industry, they're doing the layoffs because they want to run a smaller, more efficient company. And artificial intelligence is a very buzzy way to be able to do that and use AI as air cover. That said, is there a real sort of existential risk with artificial intelligence and employment and labor and work? Absolutely. But I think that a lot of what we've seen so far has been more noise and hype and anxiety than actual real world impact on our jobs and our work.
Okay. I'm in my 20s.
Okay.
I'm trying to build a career in media.
Good.
I don't want to be obsolete in 5 years.
Don't worry about that.
What skill set should I start building today?
I believe very, very firmly, and you can call me in 5 years if I'm wrong and yell at me, that's fine. I genuinely believe that people will crave more authenticity in the journalism and the storytelling that they consume. Because what people will crave, and what I, as the editor-in-chief of Wired, want, is for the reporter to go to the place where something is happening, or to pick up the phone and make 10 phone calls and really tell a very profound story, bring their empathy to that story, their humanity, their analysis, their expertise. And I think they will also want human connection. They will want to connect with people like you and to be able to develop a relationship with journalists and with journalists as human beings more than, I think, brands or titles and sort of the anonymity that that can come with. I think people will want more humanity. And so I think keep doing exactly what you're doing, right? Which is
Thank you.
human-led journalism and putting your face and your voice forward and your opinions and your analysis and your expertise forward. And I think you'll be fine.
I definitely think this human element is always going to be important.
I think we will want more of that like raw humanity. We will want more of that interaction. And I do think that that's why we are seeing, more physical events, right? More media companies, for example, getting into the events business. It's not just because there's money to be made there. It's because there's demand. It's because people want to be in a space together. They want to convene. And that is not to say that AI is bad. I mean, I'm not here to make that kind of value judgment. It's not about that. But it's about if we're spending all of our time interacting with chatbots and AI agents and so on and so forth, of course, at the end of the day, you're going to want to see another human being. Of course.
So speaking of AI versus humans, now that AI can do a lot more, I feel like the average person is more tech literate than they used to be, right? Do you feel like that kind of changed the way people hire?
I think what we're seeing now with AI is there is a very strong desire among hiring managers for people with a curiosity and a desire to experiment and a willingness to try. I think that as a job candidate, the worst thing you could do is come into those conversations closed off to the idea that you might be able to use AI to be better at your job. But then there are all of the skills that AI can't replicate and will never be able to replicate again, which is like the soft skills, like the human skills. How do you communicate verbally, one-to-one with another person? Are you able to, think strategically and sort of synthesize information and analyze it? Are you able to bring sort of your humanity to bear on the job that you do? I think that combination if someone is looking for a job, I would tell them to really emphasize those things.
I want to move to the bigger picture.
Sure.
AI in the region. So I hardly remember a time growing up when the word tech wasn't associated immediately with Silicon Valley and the West.
Yeah.
Like the future of tech story was always written from there.
That's so interesting to hear you say that from here. Okay.
Yeah, that's how I always felt growing up, right? But I feel like something's changing. Do you feel like the center is shifting?
Yes. And I have felt that way actually for a long time. You know, I grew up in Canada, and so I think I had this sort of slightly different view of the United States than someone who maybe grew up there. But increasingly, as the years have gone by, and then by the time I got to Wired, it was sort of like, hold on a second, like we're spending all of this time with this very myopic view of what is driving innovation and what parts of the world are really innovating and leading the charge. And it feels like nobody is sort of like looking up and looking around at the rest of the world, looking at, you know, what is happening in the Middle East, looking at what is happening in China and saying like, oh, there's really interesting and profound and powerful innovation happening all over the globe. And we really should be talking about that and paying attention to that. So when I came into the job, that was a real priority for me. And I think that's something really interesting about Wired is that we don't just operate out of the United States. We are actually launching in mid-February Wired Middle East, which will be based out of Dubai. It's an amazing team. I have to give a shout out. It's an all-women team.
Wow.
Which is incredible and a real, I will say, point of pride for me. They're amazing. But I saw that opportunity with all of these different editions of Wired to tell those global stories. And then with syndication and translation, we take those stories from all of those editions around the world and we publish all of that work in different languages. We bring that work to an American audience in English on Wired.com and in the Wired print magazine. And I think we're able to sort of like open up the aperture and I think help Western audiences understand how much is happening in the rest of the world. Like it's really eye-opening. I think it bums me out to come to a place like Dubai, to come spend time in the UAE and talk to people who feel like the work and the innovation and the momentum and the drive is not being recognized by Western media or is being covered in a way that is grounded in outdated notions, stereotypes, and sort of like a disregard. Like I don't like hearing that. And it sometimes can like hit a little bit close to home because I've lived in the United States for almost 20 years. And it's just an important reminder, I think, for leaders like myself, how audiences in other parts of the world see the work that we're doing. I think it's important. I think it's important for people in roles like mine to hear that.
That's very interesting. So talking about AI and tech in the region,
yeah,
there's obviously a lot of money and like so much is being announced, lots of deals about, you know, the future of AI and where they want to get with this.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's a little too ambitious?
You know, I think that there's nothing wrong with ambition at all. And I think one of the observations I have made in my time here, so much of the conversation around AI in the United States is conversations about competition, who's winning, internal drama at these companies, right? And I have found here, yes, there's a great deal of ambition, I think, around AI all over the world. I think in the United States, certainly. But what is that ambition actually being pointed at? What is that ambition actually driving towards? And it's been interesting for me. It feels like that investment in this part of the world is much more specifically tailored towards the user experience, right? How is AI going to change healthcare? How is it going to change education? How is it going to change the way an average person living in Dubai, living in the UAE, lives their life? And so I will take that ambition all day long because it's less about who's competing with whom or who's winning what race. And it's more just about we have great ambitions to deploy this technology in ways that better the human experience. And at the end of the day, like that is what it's about. Like that is the point.
That's so interesting. I haven't heard anyone compare it in this way.
It's tangible.
It's tangible. Yeah. Exactly. Maybe I still obviously use ChatGPT, right? Like OpenAI, like
of
it's
course.
still the biggest thing. But you're right. I do feel like it's more tailored to the user experience here.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a different conversation than the one that's happening.
The worst thing that can happen if an initiative is too ambitious, is that it falls short of those grandiose ambitions.
Yeah.
But I think there's no question that with the amount of investment that's happening, the amount of focus on AI in this region, it will get somewhere. And I think what's so interesting for me to just be here and to experience is that we're not talking theoretical. We're not talking in 5 years. We're talking technology that's already being put to use. And so I think that's been very helpful for me to see.
Was there like a moment or like a headline or maybe like a specific deal that was struck that made you realize, oh, like the global tech story isn't just there anymore? Like there's something happening over here and we need to pay attention to it?
I will say, I mean, I think what's going on with Stargate has been very, very interesting. And sort of looking at the UAE's involvement in that this is not just a Sam Altman story, by any measure.
I love that.
but I feel like these moments come up all the time and it's easy to gloss over them. But if you read a lot of the coverage about AI investment and infrastructure, capital investment, you will find the UAE in those stories, right? Even if they're written for an American audience from an American perspective, like there will be a line about, where that investment is coming from or where that infrastructure is being developed.
More than I would have expected. Actually.
Much more. But because these stories are coming from American media, of course, the names in the headline and the way the story is framed will be focused on President Trump's involvement, Sam Altman, sort of the U.S. tech executives will be the heart of the story. I think you need to look a little bit deeper to sort of understand that actually there is a lot of sort of interlocking investment and sort of, I would like to say, global collaboration to bring this technology to bear. I am a big believer in, collaboration as the means to the end, right?
Yeah.
I think that that's how you get the best results.
Game theory.
Of course. And I think that the result that we're looking for is a better lived experience, is the democratization of access to healthcare, of access to education. That, for me, like in my heart, is the goal. That's not always sort of how it manifests, on a global stage, but like that's the goal.
Yeah.
So I'm a collaborative woman. Again, Canadian. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I want to move to the future of publishing.
Okay.
Everyone keeps saying publishing is dying. I've personally had people, and some of them were people I reported to, that told me that my degree in journalism was an absolute waste of time and money. Honestly, it makes me think, is there still money to be made in this industry?
Yes. I think that where the conversation starts to break down around career development and sort of this industry's dying, there are no jobs. I can't tell you how many journalists I've met or worked with who have said, I write articles. Like, that's what I do. All I can say is, like, it's 2026. Like, can't just be writing articles.
Yeah.
That's not what we do anymore. We do vertical video. We produce, 16:9 video. We host podcasts. We write newsletters. We host events. We have AMAs with our audience where they can ask us questions. We build community. Like, the role of the journalist and the nature of the business and the nature of journalism and storytelling has changed. It's evolved. You have to be willing to experiment. You have to be willing to embrace change.
Yeah.
And I think I see so often an unwillingness to do those things. And then sort of this like capitulation when the jobs disappear. And it's like, what did you think was going to happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like this is actually very interesting because it brings me to the next question I wanted to ask you. Everyone consumes news on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram. I have a journalistic background and I find myself doing the same, It makes me think, for someone, let's say, that's looking for a job in media, right? Is legacy media the right place to go? Like, is there a place for legacy media in this world? Because a lot of them aren't open to that change that you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, look, if someone is sort of assessing their options, I think it is totally fair game to interrogate the legacy media that they are considering, right, for their career, and look at whether or not that media company or that brand is evolving and sort of meeting the moment and has a willingness to experiment and has a willingness to change. But I do still believe that there is a level of respect and authority and trust in a title that has been around for decades and that has a body of work to show for it. I think that does still matter. But I think that if you have to be able to combine that with this evolution, right? With, for example, okay, more and more people, especially young people, are getting their news on platforms like TikTok, on vertical video. You need to be there, not just you. I mean, it's less even for me about Wired being there. I need my journalists to be there. I need their faces. I need their voices. I need their expertise. I need their credibility to be on that platform.
Yeah.
The healthiest media ecosystem to me is one where you have an experimental, ambitious, evolving legacy media branch. And then you have really interesting, provocative, risk-taking startups and new ventures and, you know, even individuals who are branching out on their own and sort of launching their own journalistic endeavors, which is so much more possible now than it ever was. That's the like healthiest world of media I can imagine. I mean, you want competition. I think that that's healthy.
If you weren't doing this right now, what would you be doing?
You know, someone asked me that once. I won't say who, but it was in a job interview. They asked me what I would do if I wasn't a journalist. And I said, massage therapist. And then I spent like the rest of the interview just panicking, thinking like, why did I say that? Like what?
I'm not going to lie to you. I wasn't expecting that.
I do not want to touch people all day. Love and respect to the people who choose that as their career. I think it's a wonderful thing to do. It's not for me. I can't imagine there's nothing else I would want to do. I just sort of like something like just bursts out of my mouth because I don't have an answer. Like I've planned to spend the rest of my career like just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing for the best stories, for the best storytelling, and for the thing to work, right? I mean, I think trying to make media work, trying to reach an audience, trying to build a business behind it, like that's hard. I don't want a day job. I don't want a 9 to 5. Like this is what I want.
Yeah.
An all-consuming, I want an all-consuming professional experience.
I love that.
That's what I'm getting. Yeah.
I love that.